A China Airlines Boeing 737 had just touched down. As it began taxiing back to the gate, a sudden disaster erupted without warning. A burst of intense flame shot out from beneath the right wing. Within moments, thick black smoke billowed out, shrouding the entire Naha airport. An emergency evacuation order was issued immediately. A plane that had landed safely, why did it turn into a giant fireball just minutes later? What exactly caused this blaze? Was it a technical malfunction, a human error, or something far more hidden behind the scenes? Morning of August 20, 2007. Taiwan International Airport, Taiwan Province, China. On the apron, a Boeing 737-809 was undergoing a standard pre-flight inspection by the ground engineering team. This was a routine procedure before every flight, a thorough examination of the airframe, hydraulic system, engines, and all electronic equipment to ensure everything was functioning normally. The scheduled flight that day was China Airlines Flight 120, departing from Taiwan Province, bound to Naha, Okinawa, Japan. It was a short-haul international route, serving both business travelers and tourists, and was one of the key connections in the China Airlines network. The Boeing 737 assigned to this mission was one of the airline's mainstay models, designed specifically for short and medium-range flights, combining efficiency with economy. It was equipped with two CFM56-7B26 turbofan engines, renowned for their high reliability and fuel efficiency, a standard power plant for the new generation 737 series. The CFM56-7B26 was also among the most widely used civil aviation engines in the world, known for its durability and low maintenance costs. By that time, the aircraft had accumulated more than 13,600 flight hours and completed thousands of takeoffs and landings. Just 1 month earlier, it had undergone a major scheduled maintenance inspection in a hangar in Naha, Japan. However, during that inspection, a subtle assembly error went unnoticed. The locking washer on the retaining nut of the right wing slat's retraction limiter had been installed in the wrong position. This washer's purpose was to prevent the nuts from loosening under vibration. Although everything appeared normal from the outside, no alarms, no strange noises, the incorrect installation caused the nut to gradually loosen during flight vibrations. And that seemingly insignificant nut would eventually ignite a chain of catastrophic events. That day, the cockpit was manned by two pilots. The captain, 48-year-old Chiu Yen Kwa, had accumulated 7,941 flight hours, including 3,823 hours on the Boeing 737. The first officer, 26-year-old Chiu Ta-wei, had a total of 890 flight hours with 18 hours of 737 experience. After completing all checklists, the Boeing 737 slowly taxied away from the stand and headed toward the runway. The control tower issued takeoff clearance. The throttles were pushed to full power. At 9:21 a.m. local time, the aircraft began its takeoff roll. The takeoff was smooth, no warnings, no anomalies. At 10:06 a.m., after about 45 minutes of flight, the aircraft entered Okinawa's airspace. The crew began standard approach procedures, reducing speed, maintaining altitude, and maintaining communication with Naha Tower. Everything appeared perfectly normal, yet the nightmare was silently approaching. China Airlines Flight 120. At 10:25 a.m., the aircraft began to gradually slow down and descend. The flaps were lowered, the landing gear extended. The plane was fully configured for landing. Every operation proceeded step by step, calm and orderly. No sign of any abnormality. When the aircraft aligned with the runway centerline, the Boeing 737 descended steadily and touched down smoothly on the runway at Naha Airport. 2 minutes later, Flight 120 completed its landing without incident and began taxiing toward the gate. Inside the cockpit, the crew followed the standard post-landing checklist. The aircraft was gradually returning to ground mode. The flaps were being retracted, and various auxiliary control surfaces were shut down one after another. Everything still appeared calm and routine. But during this very process, a hidden danger that had long lain dormant was suddenly triggered. Deep within the wing's internal structure, a limit bolt, which had been incorrectly installed long ago, began to produce fatal consequences. As the slack retraction system moved, the bolt rubbed against surrounding components and eventually pierced through the metal wall of the auxiliary fuel tank. Fuel began to leak rapidly. Liquid fuel streamed out from beneath the right wing, carried backward by the airflow. Some of it pooled near the wing root, dangerously close to the engine's high-temperature zone, a spark away from ignition. The bolt that caused the accident was part of the slat retraction limiter mechanism beneath the wing. Its purpose was to prevent the slat system from overextending or retracting beyond its designed range. Though only a small component, it was a crucial safeguard for flight safety. However, due to improper installation, it failed to perform its restraining function and instead became a rigid metal obstacle that directly punctured the aluminum alloy wall of the auxiliary fuel tank. The wall could withstand fuel pressure, but not the mechanical force of a bolt driven through metal. In the cockpit, the two pilots still detected no abnormalities. The Boeing 737 continued taxiing, eventually arriving at Stand 41 in front of the international terminal. After the engines were shut down, ground staff began securing the aircraft, chalking the wheels, and preparing to position the mobile boarding stairs for passenger disembarkation. Within just a few short minutes after the plane had come to a complete stop, the hidden danger erupted in full. The leaking fuel continued to flow downward, dripping on the number 2 right engine. The situation escalated far too quickly for the ground crew to notice. The moment the fuel touched the still hot metal components of the engine, a violent flash of fire erupted. A column of thick black smoke rose straight into the sky. Inside the cabin, passengers were still unaware of what was happening. Many had already unbuckled their seatbelts, preparing to disembark, unaware that disaster was spreading beneath their feet. On the ground, a terrified technician grabbed his radio, seeing flames rapidly spreading. He shouted desperately, trying to warn the cockpit crew that disaster had struck. Through the cockpit windows, the captain saw dense smoke pouring from beneath the right wing. He immediately grabbed the intercom and gave a firm order: prepare to open the emergency exits. The emergency signal was transmitted throughout the cabin. The once calm aircraft suddenly plunged into chaos. On the ramp, a maintenance engineer rushed toward the burning right engine with a fire extinguisher in hand, trying to get close enough to fight the flames. But the intense heat and sudden explosions forced him to retreat, helplessly watching the fire grow larger by the second. Inside the cockpit, the captain activated the engine fire suppression system, hoping to cut off the flames from within. But it was too late. The fire was outside the engine nacelle, beyond the reach of the extinguishing system. The blaze continued to spread, the danger escalating with every passing second. Within minutes, thick black smoke had engulfed the entire apron, even drifting toward the International Terminal building. From the control tower, air traffic controllers watched the scene unfold on their monitors and immediately issued the highest level of emergency alert. The airport fire brigade was dispatched at once. Sirens wailed across the tarmac as a fleet of fire trucks sped toward the burning aircraft. By now, the right wing was completely engulfed in flames. The number 2 engine and surrounding structures were being devoured by fire. Realizing the blaze was out of control, the captain made a decisive call: evacuate immediately. Seconds later, the Boeing 737's 4 main cabin doors burst open. The escape slides deployed and inflated instantly. Flight attendants shouted urgently, "Get out! Get out! Move quickly!" Panicked passengers poured out of the aircraft, sliding down the chutes. A desperate race between life and death had begun. 165 lives were now running against the flames. Cabin crew held their positions at each exit, directing passengers down in groups, urging everyone to stay calm, to grip the slide rails. They ensured that the elderly and children went first, preventing panic and trampling, doing everything in their power to make the evacuation as orderly as possible. The fire aboard China Airlines Flight 120 was now completely out of control. Fuel, carried by the airflow, was blown across the fuselage and rapidly spread to the left wing. Explosions and the screech of tearing metal intertwined, creating a scene of sheer horror. Several cabin windows shattered under the intense heat, and thick black smoke gushed from the cracks, enveloping the entire apron. From inside the cabin came screams and cries for help. Although chaos reigned, fortunately, most passengers, having already been alerted, were standing in the aisles ready to evacuate. Thanks to this, the flight attendants were able to guide the crowd efficiently. In less than 2 minutes, all passengers had successfully slid down the escape slides and escaped from the burning aircraft. By this time, only the 2 pilots remained on board. The middle section of the plane was already engulfed in flames, and the cockpit was filling with smoke. Breathing became difficult. Realizing that remaining inside was no longer possible, the captain and first officer decided to escape through the cockpit side windows using the emergency ropes. The first officer went first. Just as he grasped the rope, a massive explosion tore through the number 2 engine and the right wing fuel tank simultaneously. The deafening blast thundered across the airport. The whole Boeing aircraft shook violently. A huge fireball shot into the sky. The shockwave from the explosion knocked the first officer off the rope, sending him plunging nearly 5 meters to the ground. Miraculously, he suffered only mild dizziness and was able to stand again within seconds. Moments later, the captain also escaped from the cockpit. Only then did the first fire trucks arrive at the scene. Thick smoke billowed high over Okinawan Island, visible from several kilometers away. After nearly an hour of intense firefighting, the blaze was finally extinguished. When the smoke cleared, all that remained at Gate 41 was the charred, collapsed skeleton of what had once been a Boeing 737. The blackened wreckage, tilted and twisted on the concrete, testified to the ferocity of the flames. And yet, astonishingly, no lives had been lost. All passengers and crew had been safely evacuated. Among them, a 57-year-old man suffering from hypertension experienced dizziness and breathing difficulty during the evacuation chaos and was immediately taken to a nearby hospital for treatment. An 8-year-old girl from Hong Kong also felt unwell after escaping, showing signs of shock and exhaustion, and received urgent medical attention from airport paramedics. The Japan Transport Safety Board, JTSB, concluded in its final investigation report that the direct cause of the China Airlines Flight 120 fire was a maintenance error. Specifically, a small washer used to secure the actuator piston in the slat drive mechanism had been incorrectly installed or possibly omitted during prior maintenance. When the aircraft landed and the slats were retracted, the component came loose and fell into the wing's leading edge guide track, where it was pushed through the outer wall of the right wing fuel tank, causing a fuel leak. The leaking fuel then came into contact with hot engine components, igniting the fire roughly 1 minute after the aircraft came to a complete stop. Fortunately, the part did not come loose during flight, for if it had, the consequences would have been catastrophic, potentially leading to loss of control and an airborne disaster.